I was sitting in my modest kitchen when my phone buzzed with a family group text. My heart sank as I read message after message about a luxury vacation to Hawaii next week. My son-in-law Derek had organized everything. I scrolled through excited responses from my daughter Sarah, my son Michael, and my grandchildren, realizing my name was deliberately absent. 20 minutes later, Derek called me directly. His voice carried that familiar smugness as he explained I would ruin the mood and was better left behind. I stayed calm, simply saying I understood. Derek hung up, satisfied he had won. As I sat there holding the silent phone, 2 years of escalating disrespect from Derek flashed through my mind like a painful movie. It started small after he married my daughter Sarah. Derek was a successful software engineer who made good money, and he never let anyone forget it. He had this way of dismissing my stories at family dinners, cutting me off mid-sentence with comments like, "That was a different time, Clayton, or things work differently now." I remembered the first time he openly mocked my lifestyle. We were at Sarah's birthday party, and Derek made jokes about my vintage pickup truck parked next to his BMW. He told the whole family how embarrassing it was that Sarah's father drove something held together with duct tape and prayer. Everyone laughed, thinking it was harmless teasing. But I saw the calculation in his eyes, the way he watched to see if his words landed. What Derek did not know, what no one in my family knew, was that I had been deliberately hiding my true financial status for years. After my beloved wife Martha passed away 5 years ago, I made a promise to her that I would stay humble and grounded. Martha was a schoolteacher her whole life, and she always worried that too much money would corrupt our family values. So I kept living in our modest duplex, driving my old truck, and wearing clothes from discount stores, even as my business empire grew beyond what Derek could imagine. The manipulation got worse over time. Derek started scheduling family gatherings when he knew I had conflicts, then telling everyone I did not prioritize family. He convinced Sarah that my duplex was too small for holiday dinners, so they moved celebrations to his house where he controlled everything. He would seat me at the far end of the table, away from my grandchildren, then interrupt whenever I tried to share stories from my past. I watched my relationship with my son Michael deteriorate as Derek worked his poison. Michael started viewing me as outdated and irrelevant. During our last conversation, Michael actually suggested I consider moving to a retirement community because I was getting on in years and might need more support. The irony was devastating, but I kept my mouth shut about my true circumstances. Derek's strategy became crystal clear over time. He was systematically isolating me from family events, making me seem like a burden, an embarrassment, a relic from a bygone era. He convinced my children that I was holding them back from their modern, successful lives. And through it all, I played along, honoring Martha's wish that I remain humble. But sitting in my kitchen that evening, reading about a family vacation I was excluded from, I realized Derek had crossed a line. This was not about protecting my humility anymore. This was about a man trying to erase me from my own family. What Derek did not know was that the luxury resort he had chosen for this exclusive family getaway was one of 43 properties I owned across the United States. The Ocean Breeze Paradise Resort in Maui was actually my crown jewel, worth $12 million and booked solid for the next 2 years. As I stared at Derek's smug text messages, I made a decision that would change everything. It was time to honor the other part of Martha's advice, the part she whispered to me just days before she died. "Clayton, honey, stay humble and kind, but never let anyone walk all over our family." Sometimes love means fighting back. The next morning I sat in my small home office, surrounded by the carefully maintained illusion of a simple retiree's life. File cabinets that looked like they held old tax records actually contained documents for a hospitality empire that employed over 800 people. My desk, scarred from years of use, held a laptop that connected me to operations spanning from California to Florida. Martha and I started with nothing. She taught 3rd grade for 37 years while I worked construction, then moved into property management. After she died, I threw myself into work to deal with the grief. I started small, buying a rundown bed and breakfast in Vermont that no one else wanted. Martha always said I had an eye for seeing potential where others saw problems. That first property taught me everything about the hospitality business. I learned to read people, understand what made travelers feel welcome, and most importantly, how to turn struggling properties into profitable ventures. Within a year, I had transformed that Vermont inn into a destination that stayed booked year-round. From there, I developed a system. I would find distressed properties in prime locations, usually family-owned places that were failing due to poor management or lack of capital. Instead of swooping in like a corporate vulture, I approached each purchase with respect for the property's history. I kept existing staff whenever possible, maintained the character that made each place special, and slowly upgraded amenities to modern standards. My employees knew me only as Mr. C. I worked alongside housekeepers, helped in kitchens during busy periods, and made it a point to know every staff member's name. This hands-on approach meant I understood every aspect of the business, from the cost of quality linens to the importance of proper drainage in guest bathrooms. The irony of Derek's choice was almost poetic. He had spent weeks researching the perfect resort for his exclusive family vacation, reading reviews that praised the property's attention to detail and personalized service. He bragged to Sarah about finding a place that understood luxury and would show the family what real success looked like. What he did not know was that every review he read, every amenity he admired, was the result of my vision and investment. Ocean Breeze Paradise Resort was my masterpiece. I had purchased the struggling property 3 years ago and spent over $4 million transforming it into something special. The resort featured private beach access, a world-class spa, 3 restaurants, and suites that regularly hosted celebrities and politicians. The presidential suite that Derek had booked for himself and Sarah cost $3,000 per night. My assistant Amanda had been with me for 8 years, starting when she was fresh out of hospitality school. She was the only person outside my accountant who knew the full scope of my holdings. Amanda managed day-to-day operations across all properties, while I maintained my cover as a simple retiree. She coordinated with property managers, oversaw major renovations, and handled the delicate balance of keeping my identity secret while ensuring consistent quality across the chain. The business had made me wealthy beyond anything Derek could comprehend. My net worth exceeded $50 million, not counting the ongoing appreciation of prime real estate. I owned properties in Napa Valley, the Outer Banks, downtown Charleston, and the mountains of Colorado. Each property maintained its unique character while meeting the exacting standards I had developed over years of hands-on experience. But the real shock came when I decided to investigate Derek's recent behavior more thoroughly. Using resources available to someone of my financial position, I discovered something that changed everything. Derek had been spreading rumors to our extended family that I was becoming a financial burden. He told my sister Helen that I was struggling to make ends meet and suggested the family should keep an eye on the old man's finances. More disturbing, Derek had been telling people I was showing signs of mental decline. He cited my occasional confusion during family conversations as evidence of early dementia, carefully omitting that my distraction usually came from managing business calls or reviewing property reports during visits. He painted himself as the responsible son-in-law, burdened with watching out for his wife's aging father, who was losing his grip on reality. As I uncovered the extent of Derek's deception, I realized this vacation exclusion was just the latest move in a larger game. Derek was not just trying to embarrass or isolate me. He was systematically destroying my reputation within the family, positioning himself as the competent leader while making me appear incompetent and dependent. That evening, I called Amanda from the secure line in my office. "I need you to prepare for some special guests at Ocean Breeze," I told her. "My son-in-law has booked a family vacation there, and he has no idea who owns the place." Amanda's laugh was music to my ears as I explained the situation and outlined my plan for what would become the most satisfying business trip of my career. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of careful preparation. I called Amanda first thing Monday morning, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "I need you to upgrade Derek's party to the Maui Sunset Suites," I instructed. "Give them the full VIP treatment, but keep my identity absolutely confidential. Staff should know only that the owner has a special interest in ensuring these guests have an exceptional experience." Amanda understood immediately. "Should I arrange for the special services package?" she asked, referring to our top-tier amenities that included personal concierge service, private chef options, and exclusive access to resort facilities. "Everything," I confirmed. "I want Derek to feel like royalty right up until reality hits." While Amanda handled the resort preparations, I began my own investigation into Derek's activities. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Derek had been systematically poisoning my relationship with my children for months, and his methods were more calculated than I had imagined. Through social media posts that I had never bothered checking before, I found a trail of mockery and manipulation. Derek had been posting photos from family gatherings with captions like, "Trying to include everyone, even when some people are stuck in the past," and "Family patience is a virtue, especially with the older generation." The comments from friends and extended family showed how effectively he had crafted an image of himself as the long-suffering son-in-law dealing with a difficult father-in-law. But the real discovery came when I hired a private investigator to look deeper into Derek's background. What I learned shattered any remaining doubt about his true character. Derek had been intercepting my phone calls to Sarah, screening my access to my own daughter. When I thought Sarah was too busy to talk, the truth was that Derek was answering her phone and making excuses. He had been telling her that I called constantly and that my repeated attempts to reach her were evidence of my declining mental state. The investigator also uncovered Derek's manipulation of my son, Michael. Derek had convinced Michael that I was developing early dementia, pointing to my occasional moments of distraction as medical evidence. What Derek presented as confusion was actually me taking important business calls or reviewing urgent property matters during family visits. Derek had spun my successful multitasking as cognitive decline. The most devastating discovery came on Wednesday evening. The investigator called with news that made me sit down hard in my kitchen chair. Derek had secretly applied to become my legal guardian, claiming mental incompetence on my part. The papers were already filed in Maricopa County Court, supported by a petition claiming that I was financially irresponsible and showing clear signs of cognitive decline that put him at risk. Derek's petition included evidence of my mental state, testimony from Michael about my confused behavior during family visits, documentation of my financial struggles based on my modest lifestyle, and even a statement from Sarah expressing concern about my ability to manage my affairs independently. Sarah's statement had clearly been manipulated out of context, probably from a casual conversation about general elderly care concerns. The legal filing revealed Derek's endgame. As my court-appointed guardian, he would have control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. He could institutionalize me, sell my modest duplex, and effectively erase me from family decisions while positioning himself as the heroic caretaker managing a difficult situation. But Derek had made a critical error. His investigation into my financial background for the guardianship petition had triggered automatic flags with my business attorneys and financial advisors. By Thursday morning, I had a stack of documents proving not only my mental competence, but also revealing Derek's own questionable financial activities. My attorney, Robert Chen, called Thursday afternoon with information that changed everything. "Clayton, Derek's background check for the guardianship petition revealed some interesting inconsistencies in his employment and tax records. I think you need to see this." The documents Robert shared showed a pattern of embezzlement from Derek's software company, along with tax evasion schemes involving unreported income from freelance consulting work. Derek had been skimming money from corporate accounts and hiding assets through a complex network of shell companies. His lifestyle, which he presented as the result of hard work and smart investments, was actually funded through theft and fraud. As I reviewed the evidence, I realized Derek's attack on my family was motivated by more than just arrogance. He was desperate to gain control over what he believed were my modest assets because his own financial house of cards was about to collapse. The guardianship would give him legal access to my property and finances, providing a cushion when his criminal activity was inevitably discovered. That evening, I began preparing for my trip to Maui. I packed my usual modest clothes, but also included business attire that I had not worn in months. I reviewed property reports and guest satisfaction surveys, preparing to step back into my role as owner and operator. Most importantly, I prepared emotionally for what would be the most important confrontation of my life. Friday morning, I called my children to say goodbye, keeping my voice casual and warm. Sarah sounded rushed, clearly stressed about final vacation preparations. "Dad, I'm sorry you can't join us this time," she said, and I could hear the conflict in her voice. "Maybe next year we can plan something that works for everyone." "Don't worry about me, sweetheart," I replied. "I'll find ways to keep busy. You just focus on having a wonderful time with your family." When I hung up, I felt the weight of Martha's presence in the room. She would have been proud of the man I had become, building something meaningful while staying true to our values. But she also would have expected me to fight for our family when the situation demanded it. The time for quiet humility had passed. Derek had declared war on my family, and I was about to show him what real power looked like. I arrived at Ocean Breeze Paradise Resort on Saturday afternoon, 3 days before Derek's family vacation was scheduled to begin. The familiar sight of palm trees swaying against the azure Hawaiian sky filled me with the satisfaction that comes from owning something beautiful and well-managed. The resort was bustling with the controlled energy of peak season, staff members moving efficiently between tasks while maintaining the relaxed atmosphere that kept guests coming back year after year. Amanda met me at the main entrance, her professional smile widening into genuine warmth when she saw me. "Mr. Clayton," she said, "using the formal address we maintained in public, your suite is ready, and the staff briefing is scheduled for this evening." As we walked through the lobby, I noted the fresh orchid arrangements and the way afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the private beach. Every detail reflected the standards I had spent years developing. Guests moved through the space with the relaxed confidence that comes from knowing they are somewhere special, somewhere that understands their needs before they express them. My owner's suite occupied the entire top floor of the main building, with panoramic views of the ocean and private access to all resort facilities. The space was designed for both comfort and business, with a full office setup that allowed me to manage operations across all properties while enjoying the peaceful setting that made this location so special. Sunday and Monday passed quickly as I reviewed operations and prepared for Derek's arrival. I worked alongside housekeeping staff to ensure the Maui Sunset Suites were perfect, personally inspecting every detail from thread count on the linens to water pressure in the rainfall showers. The irony was not lost on me that I was preparing a luxury experience for the man who thought I was too much of a burden to include in family activities. Tuesday morning arrived with typical Hawaiian perfection: clear skies, gentle trade winds, and the kind of sunshine that makes everything seem possible. I positioned myself in the lobby, dressed in casual tourist clothes, reading a newspaper and blending in with other guests. At precisely 2:30 in the afternoon, Derek's party arrived in a convoy of rental vehicles. The sight of my grandchildren spilling out of the cars filled my heart with joy, even as I maintained my cover. 10-year-old Emma was bouncing with excitement, her younger brother James clutching a stuffed dolphin, while teenage Ashley tried to look unimpressed but failed to hide her amazement at the resort's beauty. My daughter Sarah emerged, looking tired but happy, while my son Michael seemed overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them. Then Derek stepped out of the lead vehicle, and I felt my jaw tighten despite my preparation. He was dressed in expensive resort wear, designer sunglasses pushed up on his head, projecting the image of a successful man treating his family to the best money could buy. He immediately began directing everyone with the air of someone accustomed to being in charge. "Remember, this is a very exclusive resort," Derek announced to the group. "We need to maintain appropriate standards and behavior. This is not some budget vacation spot." I watched from my hidden position as Derek approached the front desk, his voice carrying the entitled tone I had come to despise. "Derek Thompson, checking in. I have reservations for the Maui Sunset Suites, and I expect everything to be exactly as specified." The desk clerk, Maria, handled the interaction with professional grace while I observed Derek's behavior. Within 5 minutes, he was questioning upgrade availability, complaining about the location of assigned parking spaces, and making veiled threats about online reviews if his expectations were not exceeded. That's when Emma spotted me. "Grandpa Clayton!" she shrieked with pure joy, abandoning her luggage and running across the lobby to throw herself into my arms. The impact nearly knocked me over, but her genuine love and excitement made my heart soar. The rest of the family turned in shock. Sarah's face showed a complex mix of relief, confusion, and concern. Michael looked stunned, while Ashley abandoned her teenage coolness to grin widely. But Derek's expression shifted through surprise, confusion, and finally to the cold anger I knew so well. "What are you doing here?" Derek demanded, his voice cutting through the lobby's peaceful atmosphere. Other guests turned to stare as his volume rose. "How did you even know where we were staying?" I kept my voice calm and warm, focused on my grandchildren rather than Derek's aggression. "Well, would you believe I won a contest? Free week at this beautiful resort, All expenses paid. Pure coincidence that it's the same place you chose for your family vacation. Derek's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. That's impossible. This resort is exclusive. They don't run contests for random winners. Apparently they do, I replied with a gentle smile, still holding Emma while James grabbed onto my other arm. I was as surprised as anyone when I got the call. Thought it might be a scam at first. Sarah stepped forward, her voice soft with conflict. Dad, this is so unexpected. We had no idea you would be here. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry if this creates any awkwardness. I can keep to myself if that would make things easier for everyone. No, Emma protested immediately. Grandpa, you have to spend time with us. We can show you the pools and the beach and everything. Derek's face was turning red as he struggled to maintain composure in the public setting. This is completely unacceptable, he said, turning back to the desk clerk. I need to speak with management immediately. There's been some kind of error with your reservation system. Maria maintained her professional demeanor despite Derek's increasingly hostile tone. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand the problem. Both parties have valid reservations for the same time period. Is there a specific issue with your accommodations? The issue, Derek said, his voice rising again, is that this man, he pointed at me, has somehow manipulated his way into our private family vacation. I want him removed from this property immediately. The lobby had grown quiet as other guests and staff watched the confrontation unfold. I could see Michael looking embarrassed by Derek's public outburst, while Sarah seemed torn between protecting her husband and defending her father. That's when Amanda appeared, dressed in her management attire with the nameplate identifying her as the guest relations director. Is there a problem here? She asked with polished professionalism. Derek immediately shifted his attention to her, his voice taking on the condescending tone he used when he thought he was dealing with someone he could intimidate. Yes, there's a major problem. This man, he pointed at me again, is harassing my family. I need him removed from this resort immediately, or I'll be forced to take legal action against your establishment. Amanda listened patiently, occasionally glancing at me with perfectly concealed amusement. When Derek finished his demands, she consulted her tablet and looked up with a helpful smile. I see the issue now, she announced. It appears we have a very special situation. Mr. Clayton here is not just any contest winner. According to our records, he's been upgraded to our owner's villa as part of a very exclusive promotional package. This is actually quite an honor for our resort. Derek's mouth fell open as he processed this information. The idea that I, his supposedly incompetent father-in-law, had somehow secured more luxurious accommodations than his expensive family suite was clearly beyond his comprehension. That's impossible, he sputtered. Check your records again. There must be some mistake. No mistake, sir, Amanda replied smoothly. In fact, let me arrange for someone to show your family to your suites so you can get settled in. And Mr. Clayton, your transportation to the villa is waiting whenever you're ready. As hotel staff began gathering luggage and organizing the family's check-in process, I found myself surrounded by my grandchildren, all talking at once about their excitement for the week ahead. Sarah approached with tears in her eyes. Dad, I don't understand how this happened, but I'm so glad you're here, she whispered, hugging me tightly. I missed you. Over her shoulder, I watched Derek's face transform from confusion to calculation. I could practically see the gears turning as he began planning his next move. But what Derek did not know was that every word of his public tantrum had been quietly recorded by resort security, and his true character was already being documented for the confrontation that was still to come. The next morning brought the kind of perfect Hawaiian weather that makes visitors understand why people abandon mainland lives for island paradise. I was enjoying coffee on my villa's private terrace when I noticed Derek marching purposefully across the resort grounds toward the main building. His body language screamed determination mixed with barely controlled anger. I had expected this confrontation, so I was not surprised when Amanda called 30 minutes later with an update. Your son-in-law is in my office demanding to see documentation of your contest winnings, she reported, barely containing her amusement. He's threatening legal action against the resort for what he calls fraudulent promotional practices. How are you handling it? I asked, watching a family of dolphins play in the waves beyond my terrace. I'm showing him our beautifully crafted contest paperwork that legal prepared yesterday, Amanda replied. Complete with official seals, entry confirmation numbers, and a detailed explanation of the selection process. It's quite convincing. While Derek wasted his morning demanding proof of something that did not exist, I spent time with my grandchildren at the resort's private beach. Emma and James were fascinated by the tide pools, while Ashley had found a group of teenagers from another family and was pretending to be too mature for her grandfather's company while clearly enjoying every minute. Sarah joined us around noon, looking more relaxed than I had seen her in months. "Dad, I owe you an apology," she said as we walked along the water's edge. "I've been so focused on keeping peace between you and Derek that I forgot what really matters." "You don't need to apologize for anything, sweetheart," I replied. "Marriage is complicated, and wanting harmony in your family is natural. But it's not harmony if it means excluding you," Sarah continued. "I've been seeing things differently since we got here. The way Derek spoke to the hotel staff yesterday, his reaction to finding you here, it's made me realize some things I've been avoiding." Our conversation was interrupted by Derek's return from his investigative mission. His face was flushed with frustration as he approached our beach setup with Michael trailing behind, looking uncomfortable. "I need to talk to you," Derek announced without preamble, pointing directly at me. "Privately." "Dad, maybe we should all discuss whatever this is together," Sarah suggested, but Derek's sharp look silenced her. I stood and brushed sand from my clothes. "It's fine, Sarah. Let's take a walk, Derek." We moved away from the family group, walking toward a secluded area of the beach where Derek immediately launched into his prepared attack. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, old man, but I've figured out your angle." "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied calmly. "This whole contest story is garbage," Derek continued, his voice rising with each word. "Nobody wins week-long stays at resorts like this. You somehow followed us here, probably tracked our reservations through Sarah's credit card or something equally pathetic." I maintained my calm demeanor, knowing that Derek's increasing agitation was being observed by other resort guests. "Derek, I understand you're upset about the coincidence, but I assure you my presence here has nothing to do with your family vacation plans." "Right," Derek sneered. "And I suppose it's also a coincidence that you suddenly have money for expensive resort stays when you've been living like a church mouse for years. Where did the money really come from, Clayton? Did you take out a reverse mortgage on that dump you live in?" His words stung, but I recognized the setup. Derek was trying to provoke me into an emotional response he could use as evidence of my supposed mental instability. Instead, I used the moment to plant seeds of doubt about his own situation. "I'm curious about something, Derek," I said, my tone thoughtful rather than confrontational. "How exactly did you afford this vacation? Resort stays like this must cost more than most people make in several months." For just a moment, Derek's confident facade flickered. "I work hard and save my money, unlike some people who live in the past and refuse to embrace success." "Of course," I agreed, though I have to admit, I was surprised when my accountant called last week about some unusual activity on property records. Apparently, someone has been looking into ownership information for my duplex. "Any idea why someone would be researching my financial situation?" Derek's face went pale, confirming what I already suspected. His guardianship petition required detailed financial information about my assets, which meant he had been conducting unauthorized investigations into my property ownership and credit history. "I don't know anything about that," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm sure it's nothing," I replied pleasantly, though it did remind me to update my estate planning documents. Amazing how much paperwork accumulates over the years when you're trying to protect your family's future. That afternoon, I received another call from Amanda with an update on Derek's activities. He had spent several hours in the business center, making phone calls and researching contest validation websites. More interesting, he had hired a local private investigator to look into my background, apparently convinced that exposing my fraud would somehow vindicate his position. What Derek did not realize was that his investigation would uncover information he was not prepared to handle. My business empire was structured through a complex network of holding companies and trusts designed to protect assets and maintain privacy. But it also meant that anyone digging into Clayton Miller's background would eventually stumble across connections to one of the most successful hospitality companies in the United States. The irony was perfect. In his desperation to prove I was lying about my circumstances, Derek was about to discover that I had been lying, but not in the way he expected. That evening, the family gathered for dinner at the resort's signature restaurant, a beachfront establishment that I had personally designed to showcase both local ingredients and international cuisine standards. Derek appeared distracted throughout the meal, checking his phone repeatedly and barely participating in conversation. Michael seemed increasingly uncomfortable with Derek's behavior, especially when Derek snapped at the waitstaff over minor timing issues with course delivery. I watched my son's expression change as he observed Derek's treatment of service workers, behavior that contrasted sharply with the respect and kindness I had always modeled for my children. "Derek, is everything all right?" Sarah asked during dessert. "You seem upset about something." "I'm fine," Derek replied curtly. "Just dealing with some business issues that require attention." "On vacation?" Ashley asked with teenage directness. "That seems kind of rude to make everyone else deal with your bad mood because of work stuff." Derek's face flushed at being called out by a 16-year-old, but before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his expression shifted to something approaching panic. "I need to take this," he announced, standing abruptly and walking away from the table. Through the restaurant's open windows, we could hear fragments of Derek's increasingly agitated conversation. Words like impossible, check again, and legal consequences drifted back to our table, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere for what should have been a relaxing family dinner. When Derek returned 20 minutes later, his face was ashen and his hands were visibly shaking. Whatever information he had received during that phone call had fundamentally altered his understanding of the situation. "Derek," Sarah said softly, "you're scaring me. What's wrong?" Derek looked around the table, at faces showing various levels of concern, confusion, and annoyance. His gaze finally settled on me, and I could see the moment when everything clicked into place for him. "We need to talk," he said to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "All of us. Tomorrow morning. There are some things that need to be discussed." As we walked back to our respective accommodations that evening, I reflected on how quickly things could change when people's true characters were revealed under pressure. Derek's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and tomorrow would bring the confrontation that would reshape our family's dynamics forever. I woke before dawn on Thursday morning, my internal clock still adjusted to mainland time despite several days in paradise. The ocean was calm in the pre-sunrise darkness, and the resort grounds held that peaceful quality that comes just before the day's activities begin. I knew this would be the last quiet moment before everything changed. Amanda called at 7 sharp with the news I had been expecting. "The private investigator Derek hired finished his background check," she reported. "According to my contact at the investigation firm, Derek received a preliminary report last night that identified you as the owner of a 43-property hospitality empire with an estimated net worth exceeding $50 million. "How did Derek react to this information?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "Apparently he accused the investigator of mixing up files and demanded a complete re-investigation," Amanda replied with barely concealed amusement. When the investigator showed him property ownership records, tax filings, and business incorporation documents, Derek locked himself in his suite and refused to come out for the rest of the evening. The family meeting Derek had demanded was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the resort's private conference room, a space I had designed for intimate business gatherings with panoramic ocean views and state-of-the-art presentation technology. As the hour approached, I dressed carefully in business attire for the first time since arriving at the resort, transforming from tourist to executive. When I entered the conference room, my family was already assembled around the polished mahogany table. Sarah looked nervous, Michael appeared confused, and the older grandchildren seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen. Derek sat at the far end of the table, his usual confident posture replaced by the hunched shoulders of a man who had received devastating news. "Thank you all for coming," I began, taking my position at the head of the table. "Before we start, I want to say that everything I'm about to share comes from a place of love for this family." "Dad, you're making me nervous," Sarah said softly. "Derek said there was something important we needed to discuss, but he won't tell me what it's about." I looked around the table at the faces of my children and grandchildren, these people who represented everything important in my life. "For the past several years, I've been keeping a secret from all of you. Your mother made me promise to stay humble and grounded, to never let wealth change our family values. I've honored that promise by living simply while building something I hoped would benefit all of you someday." Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Instead of explaining further, I activated the conference room's presentation system. The wall-mounted screen displayed the logo for Coastal Hospitality Group, my company's umbrella organization. "I want to show you something." The presentation I had prepared revealed the scope of my business empire: property locations, employee statistics, revenue figures, and guest satisfaction ratings that placed my resorts among the top-rated destinations in the country. Each slide built the case for what I had accomplished while maintaining my humble facade. Sarah gasped when the Ocean Breeze Paradise Resort appeared on screen with my name listed as owner and CEO. "Dad, this resort? You own this place?" "I own this place, along with 42 others across 15 states," I confirmed. "This has been my life's work since your mother passed away." Ashley spoke up with the blunt honesty that only teenagers can manage. "Wait, Grandpa, you're like super rich and you never told us?" "I wanted to honor your grandmother's values," I explained. "She worried that too much money would corrupt our family relationships. So I built this business while living the same simple life we always shared." Michael looked stunned as he processed the implications. "Dad, I suggested you move to a retirement community because I thought you were struggling financially. I've been worried about you for months." "I know, son. And that concern came from love, which meant everything to me." That's when Derek finally spoke, his voice hollow with defeat. "Tell them the rest, Clayton. Tell them what you discovered about me." I had planned to ease into this revelation, but Derek's direct challenge forced my hand. Derek's right that there's more to discuss. In preparing for this family meeting, I had my attorney investigate the legal documents that were recently filed in Arizona courts. The screen changed to display court documents, specifically Derek's petition for legal guardianship over my affairs. Derek applied to become my legal guardian, claiming I was mentally incompetent and financially irresponsible. Sarah's face went white as she read the petition summary. "Derek, what is this? Why would you file something like this without talking to me?" "Because I thought he was losing his mind," Derek replied defensively. "The way he acted confused during family visits, his modest lifestyle, I thought he needed help managing his affairs." "Or," I continued gently, "you thought gaining legal control over what you believed were my modest assets would provide financial security when your own criminal activities were discovered." The room fell silent except for the sound of waves breaking on the beach below. Derek's face had gone gray as he realized the depth of his exposure. During the background investigation required for guardianship proceedings, my attorneys discovered some interesting inconsistencies in Derek's financial records, I explained. It appears that over the past 3 years, Derek has embezzled approximately $200,000 from his software company through falsified expense reports and unauthorized access to corporate accounts. Michael looked like he had been physically struck. "Derek, is this true?" Derek's silence was answer enough, but I continued with the evidence my investigators had compiled. The embezzlement investigation also revealed extensive tax evasion through unreported income from freelance consulting work. Derek has been hiding assets through shell companies while claiming financial hardship to avoid proper tax liability. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the polished floor. "I need some air," she announced, walking quickly toward the conference room's private terrace. I followed her outside, leaving the rest of the family to process what they had learned. Sarah was gripping the terrace railing, staring out at the ocean with tears streaming down her face. "How long have you known?" she asked without turning around. "I suspected Derek was manipulating our family relationships for months," I replied, "but I only discovered the criminal activity this week when his guardianship petition triggered automatic background checks." "Why didn't you tell me sooner about the business, about your success?" "Because your mother made me promise to stay humble, and because I wanted to see what kind of man Derek really was when he thought he had power over someone he perceived as vulnerable." Sarah turned to face me, her expression a mixture of sadness and relief. "He's been telling me you were becoming a burden, that we needed to start making decisions for you because you couldn't handle things anymore." "I know, sweetheart. He's been systematically trying to isolate me from this family while positioning himself as your protector and provider." We stood together in comfortable silence, watching resort guests enjoy activities on the beach below. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "What happens now?" "That depends on Derek," I replied, "and on what kind of man he chooses to be going forward." When we returned to the conference room, Derek was sitting alone while Michael had taken the children to another part of the resort. His face showed the hollow expression of a man whose entire world had just collapsed. "Derek," I said, Taking a seat across from him, you have a choice to make. He looked up with eyes that held no trace of his former arrogance. What kind of choice? You can face the legal consequences of your actions alone, or you can accept my offer to make things right. Derek's expression shifted to confused hope. What offer? You're going to resign from your current position and make full restitution to your company. You're also going to file amended tax returns and pay all back taxes with penalties. In return, I'll offer you a job in my organization. What kind of job? Entry level. Minimum wage. You'll start in housekeeping at one of my properties and work your way up by proving your character and work ethic. You'll learn what it means to earn respect instead of demanding it. Sarah had returned during this exchange, and she looked at me with surprise. Dad, after everything he's done, why would you help him? Because despite his actions, Derek is still the father of your children and part of this family. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, but only if they're willing to earn it honestly. Derek sat in silence for several minutes, processing an offer that represented both humiliation and salvation. Finally, he looked up with something approaching humility in his expression. If I accept your offer, would there be a chance to rebuild trust with this family? That would depend entirely on your actions going forward, I replied. Trust is earned through consistent behavior over time, not through grand gestures or empty promises. As the meeting concluded, I reflected on how justice could sometimes take unexpected forms. Derek's empire of lies had crumbled in the face of truth, but the foundation for rebuilding relationships was being laid through honesty and accountability. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of my newest property, a boutique hotel in downtown Portland that I had just finished renovating. The morning sun streamed through restored stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across polished hardwood floors. This property represented everything I loved about the hospitality business, taking something beautiful that had been neglected and bringing it back to life. Derek emerged from the housekeeping office wearing a simple uniform, his hair disheveled from a morning spent cleaning guest rooms. The transformation in his appearance and demeanor was remarkable. Gone was the arrogant swagger that had defined his interactions with my family. In its place was the focused attention of someone learning to take pride in honest work. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," Derek said, using the formal address required of all entry-level employees. His voice held none of the resentment I had expected during his first months of employment. "How are you adjusting to the Portland property?" I asked, noting the genuine fatigue in his eyes that comes from physical labor. "It's good work," Derek replied, and I could hear that he meant it. "The housekeeping supervisor says I'm ready to train on front desk operations next month, if you approve." Over the past 6 months, Derek had completed his court-mandated restitution, paid his back taxes with significant penalties, and worked 40 hours per week in various entry-level positions across my hotel chain. More importantly, he had begun the much harder work of rebuilding trust with Sarah and his children. The legal proceedings had concluded exactly as my attorneys predicted. Derek's employer chose not to pursue criminal charges in exchange for full restitution and his immediate resignation. The tax authorities were satisfied with amended returns and penalty payments that consumed most of Derek's savings. His professional reputation in the software industry was effectively destroyed, but he had avoided prison time. Sarah had initially wanted to file for divorce, but she agreed to marriage counseling when Derek genuinely committed to change. Their relationship remained fragile, but there were signs of healing. Derek had sold his BMW to help cover restitution payments, and the family had moved from their expensive suburban home to a modest apartment that fit their new financial reality. The most encouraging development was Derek's relationship with his children. Freed from the pressure to maintain an image of success, he had become more present and engaged as a father. Emma and James no longer saw a distant figure obsessed with work and status, but a dad who helped with homework and played board games on weekends. My relationship with my children had transformed as well. Once the initial shock of learning about my business success had passed, Sarah and Michael embraced their roles as heirs to something meaningful rather than just financial assets. Sarah had started working part-time with Amanda, learning hotel operations with the goal of eventually managing properties herself. Michael had discovered a talent for property renovation and was overseeing restoration projects across the chain. The grandchildren adapted to our new reality, with the resilience that children bring to family changes. Ashley had initially been embarrassed by Derek's fall from grace, but she came to respect his commitment to making things right. Emma and James simply enjoyed having both their grandfather and their father more present in their lives. Perhaps most significantly, I had found peace with Martha's memory. Instead of hiding my success out of misplaced humility, I had created a family foundation that funded education programs for hospitality workers and provided college scholarships for children from working families. Martha would have been proud of using wealth to create opportunities for others rather than simply accumulating luxury for ourselves. One evening, as Derek finished his shift and prepared to return to his family, he paused near my office door. "Mr. Miller, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Of course, Derek. Come in." He sat across from my desk with the careful posture of someone who had learned to show respect. "I wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity." "You've earned every advancement through your own efforts," I replied. "How do you feel about the work?" Derek was quiet for a moment, considering his response. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something real instead of just taking from other people. I understand now why your employees respect you so much." "What do you understand?" "That real leadership comes from serving others, not from demanding they serve you. I spent so long trying to control people through fear and manipulation that I forgot how much more you can accomplish through earned respect and genuine care." Derek paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I also wanted to apologize, officially and completely, for everything I did to you and to this family. I was so focused on what I thought I deserved that I lost sight of what actually mattered." "Apology accepted," I replied simply. "But more importantly, how are things with Sarah and the children?" "Better," Derek said with the first genuine smile I had seen from him in months. "We're rebuilding our relationship based on honesty instead of the image I was trying to project. It's harder work than I expected, but it feels real in a way that nothing else has for years." As Derek left that evening, I reflected on the journey that had brought our family to this point. The pain of exclusion from that Hawaiian vacation had revealed Derek's true character, but it had also created the opportunity for genuine healing and growth. The business empire I had built in Martha's honor now employed over 1,000 people across the country, providing good jobs and creating beautiful spaces where families could make memories together. But more than that, it had become a vehicle for teaching important lessons about character, integrity, and the difference between earned respect and demanded compliance. Derek's transformation from an entitled manipulator to someone learning the value of honest work had been painful but necessary. His children were growing up with a better understanding of right and wrong, and Sarah had rediscovered her own strength and independence. Most importantly, our family had learned that true wealth lies not in the accumulation of money or power, but in the relationships built on mutual respect and genuine love. Derek's attempt to isolate and control me had ultimately backfired, bringing us closer together than we had been in years. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, I thought about Martha's final advice: stay humble and kind, but never let anyone walk all over our family. I had honored both parts of her guidance, using my resources to fight for what mattered while maintaining the values she had instilled in me. The Hawaiian vacation that was supposed to exclude and humiliate me had instead become the catalyst for revealing truth, demanding accountability, and ultimately healing our family. Sometimes the greatest acts of love require the courage to confront difficult truths and the wisdom to offer redemption to those willing to earn it. Derek still had years of work ahead to fully rebuild trust and establish his character, but he had made a genuine commitment to change. Our family had emerged stronger not despite the conflict, but because of our willingness to face hard truths and do the difficult work of forgiveness and growth. That night, as I sat in the same modest duplex where Martha and I had shared so many years together, I felt her presence in the room. She would have been proud of the man I had become, building something meaningful while staying true to our shared values. But she also would have been proud of the family we had raised, strong enough to weather crisis and wise enough to choose healing over revenge. The business empire would continue to grow, providing opportunities for employees and beautiful experiences for guests. But its true value would always be measured by the lessons it taught about character, the relationships it strengthened, and the foundation it provided for future generations to build upon. Sometimes the most important victories are not about defeating enemies, but about transforming them into allies through the power of honest work, earned respect, and unconditional love. I hope this story of family conflict and ultimate redemption resonates with your own experiences of standing up for what matters while choosing love over revenge. Have you ever had to confront someone whose actions threatened your family relationships, and how did you balance protecting yourself with offering opportunities for growth and change? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own family challenges, please hit that like button to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in difficult situations. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the power of patience, strategic thinking, and choosing redemption over revenge. Thank you for joining me on this journey through family conflict to healing and growth. Remember that true strength often lies not in crushing those who wrong us, but in creating opportunities for them to become better people. Until next time, keep fighting for what matters while holding on to the values that make the fight worthwhile.